printed, no.
Sorry?
Paper I printed?
It's not there?
No.
Do you see a printed paper over there anywhere?
I got it.
Oh, he found it. Thank you for looking.
Okay. Paper ready. Okay. Okay, let us start the Metta recital. Okay. May all beings be happy and secure. All beings have happy minds. Whatever living beings there may be, without exception, weak or strong, long, large, medium, short, subtle or gross, visible or invisible, living near or far, born or coming to birth. May all beings have happy minds. Let no one deceive another, nor despise anyone anywhere, neither from anger nor ill should anyone wish harm to another. As a mother would risk her own life to protect her only child, even so towards all living beings, one should cultivate a boundless heart. One should cultivate for all the world a heart of boundless loving friendliness, above and all around, unobstructed, without hate or resentment, standing, walking, sitting, lying down, or whenever awake. One should develop this mindfulness, which is called divinely dwelling here, not falling into erroneous views, but virtuous and endowed with vision, removing desires for sensual pleasures. One comes never again to birth in the womb. Okay, with this very noble thought in mind, let us begin our practice as usual. We always repeat the same instructions because that is what we have to practice every day. If we hear different instructions and try to practice different things, then we all get confused, and therefore we want to repeat the same instructions, expecting our friends to practice the same thing during this time. When you breathe in, you notice the breath touching the rims of your nostrils and expanding the chest area, expanding the lower abdominal area. As you breathe out, you notice the contraction of lower abdomen, contraction of chest area, and the breath leaving your nostrils. And then as you breathe in and out like this, you notice a very brief pause between inhaling and exhaling. And it is so quick that sometimes you even might not notice it. And also don't look forward to it deliberately. When you notice it, you just become aware of it. And then you feel the breath. You feel the breath entering and leaving. Then you perceive the breath and your awareness. You become, you pay attention, mindful attention. Then you will notice your awareness, you are aware of it. That is, you are consciously breathing. That is your awareness. As you breathe like this, your body relaxes, the breath relaxes, the mind relaxes. As they all relax, there is nothing to hold on to because you see only one thing all the time, the breath coming and going and changing and changing, changing. Your breath is changing, feelings change, perception change, thoughts change, and awareness changes as we breathe in and out. When you see this invariable occurrence repeatedly, then there is nothing to hold on to. As even if you want to hold on to anything, you cannot do that. And that is our awareness of generosity or letting go of state of mind. We have to learn to let go. And then mind becomes even more calm, more relaxed, more peaceful. Then the feeling of metta that we recited takes root in that space. And then your mind will also be aware of all those who are suffering. We are practicing especially because of these people all of a sudden brought to our attention, and therefore we wanted to cultivate our metta to help them to relieve from their suffering. When you know this, you feel you will have compassion, your heart melts, and you will have compassion. With these results, you become your resentment or disappointment or anger fades away. Your mind settles down, your restlessness and worry fades away, and your sleepiness and drowsiness fades away because you are very actively participating in this practice, and then you gain joy, happiness, and concentration. When you gain concentration, you can reflect back to notice the change, the most subtle changes taking place in your mind and body, which always is happening, but only when we pay attention with mindful reflection, with concentration, can we notice them changing as they do. And that is happening all the time, and you will be glad to notice what is happening in you all the time. With this, let us continue our practice. dukkha pattaca nidukkha bhaya pattaca nibbhaya soka pattaca nisoka hontu sabbe pipanino. May the suffering be free from suffering. May the fear struck be free from fear. May the grieving be free from grief. So too may all beings be. With this very wonderful practice of metta, mindfulness, and wishing others to be peaceful and happy, free from sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. These are very wonderful thoughts that we must cultivate every day, every moment, as we are mindful or awake. Now let me continue my talk on dependent origination. I was talking on mentality, materiality, consciousness, and how we use them. One thing we want to understand, to use them in our experience, in our life. As we mentioned, dependent origination is not referring to inanimate objects. It refers to our own personal life and personal experience. And that is how it works, that is how we must know it and practice. I want to say, when feeling arises, notice whether they are sensations that result from contact with the external objects or emotion that arise internally. Watch as each rise, peaks, and passes away, and then return to your regular breathing. I mentioned feeling or sensation arises. The word feeling we use for both sensation and emotions. When sensation arises through our sensory contact with the sensory object, contact when the senses contact the sensory object, sensation arises. And we must distinguish these sensations from emotions. And as sensation arises, be mindful of it and recognize it and let it arise and reach its peak and pass away. And you become aware of it to notice that this sensation is not something permanent. It arises, reaches the peak, and passes away. When emotion arises, emotion is within your own mind without any external contact with external things. You even don't know why you are emotional. When it arises, notice it, pay attention to it, and let it go as it comes. And here we have to be even more mindful to notice emotion, to recognize emotion. Recognize emotion as emotion. It is you did not cause it, Nobody outside caused it, but it arises dependent on contact. And then, as you observe your sensations, notice which sense and sense consciousness is the source of the sensation. For example, are you feeling warmth arising from the touch contact between your skin and in the cushion and the cushion, or the sound of birds outside the window, or the smell of the soup cooking in the kitchen? Don't verbalize these sensations or try to label them. Simply notice that you are experiencing sensation and then return your attention to the breath. That is not the easy way to do for most of us unless we have trained our mind to do so. And this is what is called training the mind. And this is called meditation. And all happen within your mentality and materiality. Sensations, or as we mentioned, feelings. I said yesterday, feeling is a mind conditioner or a chitta sankhara in Anapanasati Sutta. When you, if you remember, we see Piti sang patisangvedi asasissamiti sikkati. We breathe in, noticing joy, and breathe out, noticing joy. Breathe in, noticing happiness, and breathe out, noticing happiness. Then we say Chitta Sankhara Patisangvedi. Chitta Sankhara is perceptions and feelings. You go to remember our earlier explanation of mentality and materiality. In the mentality factor, there are contact, feeling, perception, thought, and attention. Here we mention feeling that triggers in your own mind. And then you notice it and be aware of it and how it arises and how it passes away. Uh, so it happens depending on the contact. Also mental factor. In fact, feeling arises from contact. Then Chitta Sankhara Patisangvedi, the last of these four group called tetrad, in this feeling section in the Anapanasati Sutta. Last is Passambhayam Chitta Sankharam. Chitta Sankhara, Passambhaya means tranquilling. It is translated tranquilizing sometimes. We don't do any artificial things to tranquilize. As we mentioned earlier, when we pay total attention without verbalizing, conceptualizing, and paying total attention to what is happening, you can see things rising and falling constantly, invariably. There is no way to stop it. It happens all the time as we pay attention to our inner functioning with concentration. We can see this uh, feeling and perception and so forth are changing all the time, and then mind becomes calm, relaxed and peaceful. That time Chitta Sankhara Pasambhaya Chitta Sankhara happened. That time, Chitta Sankhara or mind conditioners become calm. That's called Pasambhayam, Kaya Sankhara. So always remember what Kaya Sankhara or Pasambhaya and Chitta Sankhara. Here Pasambhaya and Kaya Sankhara is tranquilizing our breath and so forth. For instance, say that the sensation is the agreeable sound of a bird. Pay attention only the process that allows you to hear the sound. Sound waves making contact with your ear and you and become and being transcended to your brain, which analyzes the contact and give rise to a mental impression of feeling. And then you remind, this is a pleasant feeling. It has arisen depending on this contact, these mental factors. Remember, I mentioned in Maha Sutta all characteristics, signs, uh, indicators, and marks, all are there to arouse our awareness of what is in each group. That is, in the material category there are characteristics, signs, indicators, and so on. Mentally group there are signs, characteristics, indicators, and so forth. And then when they come together, the contact arise, feelings arise. When these factors disappear, this pleasant feeling will also disappear, because they all are changing. They all are impermanent. When one arises, the other arises. In the dependent origination, I said, when this arises, this arises. When this is, this is. When this passes away, this passes away. With the disappearance of this, this disappears. Remember that formula also. That is dependent origination formula. And therefore, when you see this, there is nothing to worry, and just return to your breath. If a sensation is physical pain, watch how the sensation changes. Watch its intensity, ebbs and flow without rejecting or resisting. Normally when sensation arises, when it reaches its peak, we can get, if we are unmindful, we can get emotional at that time. You have sensation. If you don't take care of it as it arises, seeing its appearing and disappearing, then emotion can arise. Okay? And then, so you will, when you see there's nothing permanent, they appear and disappear, then there is no room for emotion to arise. If an internally generated emotion, notice it without evaluating or judgment, and don't help it, hinder it, or interfere with that inner sensation, or even slightly. Don't nudge to promote it, help it. Simply notice it as it arises and passes away. As it passes away, return to a original subject, the breath. For instance, if you experience a pleasant fantasy while you are meditating, notice that fantasy as it arises. Notice how it becomes stronger. Uh, Fantasy can become so strong, sometimes people get carried away with their fantasies. There are all sort of stories in Buddhist literature and other literatures in the world where when people become have a lot of fantasies, they get carried away with that and lose their practice. Sometimes some people can be very confused. So, and we have to remember this is how we use this sensation to practice. So the Buddha said, whatever pleasant or painful, or neither painful or no pleasant, whether there is felt internally and externally, having known this is suffering of a false nature, disintegrating, having touched the touch of them, seeing their vanishing, one understands them thus through the destruction of feeling, hungerless is quenched. So, there is a very interesting way of looking at the feelings that we say there are three types of feelings: pleasant, unpleasant, and neither painful nor unpleasant or no pleasant. Yesterday I mentioned there is no feeling called neutral feeling or mixed feeling. The feeling is either pleasant, unpleasant, or neither pleasant nor unpleasant. It is translated painful or uh, pleasant feeling, painful feeling, neither pleasant nor painful feeling. So, whatever is felt bodily or mentally as pleasant and shooting is pleasant, soothing is pleasant feeling. Whatever is felt bodily or mentally as painful and hurting is painful feeling. Whatever is felt bodily or mentally as neither soothing nor hurting is neither pleasant nor painful feeling. Now, pleasant feeling when when the body or the mind get in touch with the present object, mental object or physical object, then pleasant feeling arises. It can happen now or it can happen from the memory. For instance, we remember very pleasant moment in the that we experienced in the past. At that moment, we enjoy experiencing that pleasant thing, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and thinking of something of the past. This moment, pleasant feeling arises. We just remember the experience we had in the past, and pleasant feeling arises now. Or we will think of we anticipate, we prepare. When I go to such and such a place, I see such and such a thing, I hear such and such a thing, I smell such and such a thing, I taste such and such a food, I touch such and such a thing, and I will have this such and such a thought. So, from the past pleasant experience or future imagination, pleasant sensation or pleasant feeling arises now. And this, in this pleasant feeling, when it is present, it is pleasant. When it is absent, it is painful. The pleasant feeling when persists, when exists, we experience pleasantness. When that pleasant feeling disappears, we experience displeasure. When painful is present, we experience pain. When painful feeling disappears, we experience pleasure. When neutral feeling is persist, we neutral, neither pleasant nor unpleasant feeling is present, we experience that. When it is absent, we have wisdom. Now, it is, we also notice the underlying tendencies. When the pleasant feeling is there, underlying tendency is what? When the pleasant feeling is there, what is underlying tendency? Greed, desire. When unpleasant feeling is there, what is the underlying tendency? Anger, hatred, disappointment. When neither pleasant nor unpleasant feeling is present, what is the underlying tendency? Confusion. Underlying tendency is confusion or ignorance. Why ignorance? When the pleasant feeling is present, greed is underlying tendency. Unpleasant feeling is present, underlying tendency is anger or hatred. When the neither pleasant nor unpleasant feeling is present, the underlying tendency is ignorance. Why is that? Because we don't know the underlying tendency is impermanent. Not seeing impermanence is ignorance. When we discuss at the beginning of this series of talks, ignorance is not seeing the truth. Not seeing the truth. What is the truth? Things are changing. Things are impermanent. Not seeing impermanence as it is ignorance. So when neither pleasant nor unpleasant sensation is present, we don't, it is present. We are so ignorant that we are ignorant of even its presence, let alone the underlying tendency. Many people don't think that there is the feeling called neither pleasant nor unpleasant feeling. They know only pleasant feeling or unpleasant feeling. But they even don't know that there is a feeling called neither pleasant nor unpleasant feeling, let alone knowing impermanence. And therefore, in this confusion, the underlying tendency is ignorance. Now, the so pleasant sensation, the opposite of pleasant sensation is painful sensation. Opposite of painful sensation or feeling is pleasant sensation or pleasant feeling. Then what is the opposite of neither pleasant nor unpleasant sensation? You can guess. The opposite of neither pleasant nor unpleasant sensation is, you say, underlying tendency is ignorance. Or, let me put it this way for you to understand better. The opposite of the underlying tendency of greed, underlying tendency of pleasure is what you call underlying tendency of pleasant feeling is greed. What is the opposite of it? Is non-greed, generosity. So what is the underlying tendency of painful feeling? Is anger. What is the opposite of it? Is metta. Now, what is the underlying tendency of neither pleasant nor unpleasant sensation? Is ignorance. What is the opposite of ignorance? Is wisdom. So, what is that wisdom? Seeing impermanence. Udayabhya, knowledge of rising and falling. One has to be very wise without any partiality to see impermanence. Because people don't like to see impermanence, that is because of the ignorance and desire. So, this is very important to remember. Especially neither pleasant nor unpleasant feeling is most of the time we have that. Most of the time we have neither pleasant nor unpleasant feeling. And therefore most of the time we don't know the underlying tendency of neither pleasant nor unpleasant feeling. And therefore we are ignorant. And therefore since we are ignorant, we are not wise. So, in order to be wise, we have to notice the underlying tendency of neither pleasant nor unpleasant feeling, which is ignorance. Ignorance. Ignorance of what? Ignorance of rising and falling. If ignorance is rising and falling, knowing rising and falling is wisdom. Very simple logic. So, but one may ask another question. One may ask, is desire underlying tendency of all pleasant feeling? Does desire have greed, what you call pleasant sensation, pleasant feeling? Does every pleasant feeling have greed as underlying tendency? Answer is no. Does every unpleasant feeling have hatred as underlying tendency? Answer is no. Not all unpleasant feeling. Does all neither pleasant nor unpleasant feeling have ignorance as underlying tendency? No. I think I will I will continue this with the answer tomorrow, because if I try to explain it now, I cannot finish it within the given time. Perhaps you may remind me if I forget to mention it tomorrow. So I will give the answer. The question is that I posed. Question is, does all present feeling have greed as underlying tendency? Does all unpleasant feeling have hatred as underlying tendency. Thus, all neither pleasant nor unpleasant feeling have confusion or ignorance as underlying tendency. These are the three questions. If I were to answer them, I will spend much longer time since we are pressed with various things lined up for our activities. I want to stop here now, and you keep thinking of it, and this is your homework. Tomorrow I will start uh, answering this question and continue this talk on feeling. Thank you very much for listening. And friends, once again, we want to conclude our morning session with wish that we started with metta, loving friendliness. We we can see more than one type of uh, things are happening to make people unhappy, suffer. This is happening all the time. This particular time, because of the COVID virus, COVID-19, it has no leaps and bounds, no one is spared. It is affected every segment, every part of our life, not only health, emotions, economics, and so forth and so on. Everything affected all over the world. There has never been such a devastating thing. Even the wars, World War One, Two, also did not create so much problems at the same time all over the world. And therefore this is the very special time for all of us to contemplate and wish peace and happiness and relieve these suffering beings from suffering, and may they live long in good health, and may all those who are trying to help them to recover from their sickness, and those who are suffering from losing their relatives, and there are many ways of trying to help them. Many people are trying to help them in many different ways, physically, psychologically, and so on. And among them are very compassionate doctors, nurses, and their supporters, and scientists who are trying to find a solution through vaccine and pills, and others also who are supporting financially, in many wonderful people are there among all these problems. And also there are people who are in a position to make decisions. May they all have wisdom, understanding, courage, determination, patience, and come up with very positive, wholesome results to help these people. And may all of them live in peace, happiness, and in very good health, and live long in good health, and finally they all attain peace. With this wish, let me end this